The webinar is going to be recorded and we're off and running. So again, to introduce myself, I'm Etna Ellis, coming to you from Hyatt, the High Incidence Accessible Technology team. This afternoon we have with us
Alice Wright, also from the Hyatt team.
And we have Linda Wilson on tech support. And we're going to talk to you about math. The agenda will come up in another slide or two, but just a quick reminder about what Everyday UDL is all about. We have the wonderful opportunity to visit schools and see folks and teachers implementing UDL in their classroom, and we just see some really wonderful windows into how it's working and what teachers are doing. And we also have some resources here in the Hyatt department that we love to share from time to time. And this Everyday UDL concept, it's not really a deep tools training, and it's not really a deep concept training. It sort of passes the Monday morning test. We show you some tools that we've seen teachers working with and we know about here in Hyatt that we think will support our students. And we just bring them to you in an easy format, and hopefully you will get 2, 3, 4 ideas that you can go away with and start working on tomorrow, the Monday morning test, or what's tomorrow? Wednesday. Okay.
Thursday.
Thursday. My goodness. All right. So we're going to move on to the next slide, I hope. And there's the next slide. Okay. I'm going to come out of presentation mode. I'm just going to go to the next slide this way. I know you can still see my my desktop, and I'm going to move some things around so we have a better vision. And Alice is going to get started. Okay.
So hello everyone. We're here today to talk about my favorite subject, which is math, and how we can support our students in our classrooms. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about today are going to be tools that you can think about that may help some students who are struggling with writing or communicating their thoughts or in and around our problem-solving tasks. So we're going to get started.
So just by way of agenda, so you know what to expect, we're just going to spend a few minutes introducing math and connecting with UDL. We're going to briefly talk about some low-tech options that Alice has found very effective in the classroom that maybe you've thought about, but maybe you haven't. And then we're going to go into some of the newer Chrome-based options. And some of these options are available just right within Google Docs. They're not specifically math-oriented, but they're math tools within a Google Doc. And then we're going to move on to some apps and websites. We do have a couple of video tutorials that we will send you to along the way, and they will be just quickly demonstrated in the next slide. This is just a list of many resources that I put together that you might want to go on to later after this webinar. A few of them we'll put again in the chat for you to actually go out into. But don't worry about taking notes or trying to get some content down on paper. Everything we talk about you'll have access to later.
So mathematics and UDL. If you're familiar with UDL, you know we have our 3 principles, which is engagement, representation, and action and expression. And so when we're thinking about math and UDL, one of the first things that I like people to think about is the engagement piece. How do we hook our students in? And one of the things that you want to think about is what tasks are you doing? How are you making connections? And does it really have an interest for the students? And a lot of our teachers know that students like things that relate to them. So if you survey your students at the beginning of the school year and a lot of them are into sports, then you really want to start looking at real-world applications in and around the area of sports so that your students will be connected to the tasks that you're trying to do. Representation. We want to think about it in 2 ways. How our content is presented as a teacher and how we want our students to present that information back to us when they do presentations explaining their ideas in the classroom, which also leads us to how we think about them expressing that knowledge. There are a variety of ways we can think about them doing that. They can write a play that demonstrates an idea. They can do a game, a simulated game that comes up with the idea that shows all the aspects of it. So trying to be a little bit creative with that concept so that our students are engaged overall and that what we're presenting to them and what they're presenting back to us is in and around their interest and are promoting our concepts in the classroom. And one of the things that we want to think about, and if you're teaching in a math classroom, you should be familiar with the standards of student mathematical practices. There are 8 practices there, and each one of these practices support our UDL strategies that we're thinking about. We're talking about our students becoming independent learners in our math classrooms, and each one of these skills that are represented in the mathematical practices promotes the idea of students having engagement in the classroom, representing what they know in the classroom, and how we present and teach our students how to meet some of these needs. And some of our tools that we're going to talk about today goes along the lines of the mathematical practices. So let's first start thinking about low-tech options or no-tech options, things that we usually use in our math classrooms, which are manipulatives, graphic organizers, and graph paper, or just paper in general. When we're thinking about paper option for our students, a lot of times students with handwriting needs need different size in terms of where the lanes are, or our graph paper needs to be a little bit bigger for them. Or graph paper needs to be a raised graph paper, which usually we always think about for students who have visual impairments, but our students who are struggling in and around graphing a line or plotting a point or seeing where things are intersecting on a graph. Just the fact that they can introduce touch into it and feel where the dot is and feel where the line is really greatly improves their understanding of space on that page. So using some of those tools that may be designed for a student who's visually impaired can sometimes help our students who are not visually impaired. And then our tried and true strategies that we do. You know, all students have line paper. They're having trouble picking up solving their equations or lining up their numbers in terms of adding and subtracting. Just turning the paper to the side and changing the direction usually helps them get to that point where they know where they're supposed to put their numbers. And also, if you need to, there are loads of sites out there now where students can, and you, can create your own graph paper or paper options that are going to fit their needs. So you really want to think about how you share that information with students.
And just to reiterate, the link to that website where you can create your own graph paper is included in the Word doc that I sent you guys earlier. So I love that idea of the students getting involved and designing their own.
As the students get older, you want them to design their own that's going to fit their size handwriting. They're not going to write any smaller by the time they get to high school. So we just want to work with what they have. When we think about graphic organizers, one of the things that we do, and I did when I was in the classroom, is just provide it for the students. And one of the things that I've thought about as I consult in different schools to help students is that we really need to tailor the graphic organizer to meet the students' thinking. And so when you're coming up with something, you want to have a variety of different graphic organizers where students can choose the one that works for themselves. Because right now I have 3 displayed and all about problem solving. And each one was designed with a specific student in mind, and it helps them when they get to select which one works for them. So we really want to think about that. And I find paper graphic organizers particularly helpful in a math class more than the electronic ones personally, but you can still have it electronic for them to do if that's where their need is.
And just along those lines, I wanted to just talk about a strategy that one of our teachers, Adele Bailey, that formerly of Rosa but now in Ridgeview, she would often offer students, and it wasn't specifically graphic organizers, but if she's working on a problem and there was a variety of levels of complexity with the same concept, she would code her choices for students as mild, medium, and then she would like make a big deal of saying this is spicy. So it was like the harder option for the student, or the more challenging option. And you know, she would sometimes be surprised by where the student went in how they selected, you know, whether it was going to be mild, medium, or spicy. And she didn't always agree with it, but she generally let it fly, and then would conference later with the student to determine whether that was a good choice or not a good choice, or you know, how the student might interact with this assignment later. But I sort of like the levity in that, and the self, you know.
And that's the same thing you want to do with graphic organizers that you provide for students. You want them to interact with it, and you want to have a conversation with them about how it worked for them. Do we need to redesign it? Do we need to do something a little different? to make it more user-friendly for that student to be able to use it. Another thing to think about, which we all know, is using manipulatives in the classroom and using images to support our students in the classroom to understand a concept. We want our students to have flexibility in terms of how they present what they know and how you explain it to them in terms of their representations. And right now, if you go into the curriculum, we have a lot to do with Algebra Tiles now. There are algebra blocks out there which are 3D models of the same sort of concept as an algebra tile. But I find Algebra Tiles, if you don't have enough for all your students to be able to use, you can just make them yourself, and students love to cut them out and make their own if possible. But we're going to get into a little later as well the virtual ones that you can use with them.
And this is not particularly an online resource, media resource webinar, but Britannica Image Quest, if you haven't gone there, it is in your media file. It's a fabulous resource to get images for every content area, but math in particular, that often is just really supported with that image alongside the language.
Yes, and thinking about the fact that we have a lot of story problems, if you want to call them that, in elementary, and word problems, if you want to call them that, in secondary.
Yeah.
A lot of times language is a stumbling block for our students. Mm-hmm. So the more you put images within that word problem so students are able to understand what those words mean, sometimes it gets to the mathematics that they need to be focused on instead of the reading task that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm. And that's into secondary also, not well beyond elementary. And I just want to say Stephanie is a fan, Stephanie over there in Kent Mill is a fan of your graphic organizers, and I'm sure Alice would be okay for us to send folks that. Okay.
I believe when you receive the PowerPoint, I put links to two of the documents that I could find last night.
Right.
And if I find the third, I'll send that to you.
We'll do a little Nancy Drew on that, and we'll definitely get that to you in the follow-up email. Okay, great.
I know we use a lot of videos. A lot of times Khan Academy is one of the places that we go. I particularly like LearnZillion, and I like it because you're able to go out there. You can set up, it's a free account. You can set up an account, put your students in it, and you can assign things to students to do. But the videos and the math that's represented in it, I've found very accurate along the way when I'm using it to develop trainings in and around the area of mathematics. And I also like it because it's linked to the Common Core State Standards within there, and it's really very easy to use. They have flexible materials that you as a teacher can download to augment your presentations, as well as students being able to use that, and parents being able to use that to help their students understand the mathematics that they have working with their student at home. So as a tool, I think LearnZillion is great, but any video that you've vetted, especially if you just go out to YouTube, is a good way to go. I have a little link to the right-hand side that's called Video Notes, and if you go out to Google and search in the Chrome store, you'll be able to find video notes there. If you're going to assign a video to a student to do as homework, there should be an accountability piece to that homework. And it doesn't always have to be questions that you design, but the expectation that students write questions that they have about what they just watched, what they understood, what they didn't understand, what they have further questions about, or what they really understand well. It doesn't really matter what, but with this tool, they can take notes on that video at the time point that they had the question. So they can always go back and re-review it. So if you have, and they can send it to you if you're using Google right now, and you can see at which point of the video they had questions, they wrote that question down. And so you'll know what they didn't understand. So if you have time a little later, you should investigate that as a tool to support your students.
And is that an app? Okay, great.
And it actually works on all platforms. So it doesn't matter if you're in the Chrome browser or if you're in IE. It just works better in the Chrome browser.
So if your students go home to a computer,
they can use it.
Yeah.
Okay, they can use it if they go home. They can use it on their phone.
Wow.
As long as they have a browser.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. The next one?
Yep. If you're using Chrome right now, or if you're not, but you have a student who's really struggling with writing their tasks down, writing those equations down, and no matter what you do right now, you're thinking, physically handwriting is not going to work. You really want to think about an equation editor. Obviously, there is an equation editor in Word, but one of the things that I like about Google Doc is that any student can have it. A student may not have Word at home, but they definitely can go to the Chrome browser if they have a computer at home or if they have a tablet or their phone to be able to use some of these tools. So GMath is a tool within the Chrome browser where they're able to write or create math expressions, and they can create graphs if they need to create a graph. I have played around with the statistical display. That I don't like as much, but the first two I do like in terms of students being able to use it very simply and being able to edit their work and preview as they go along and be able to change features if they need to be able to see it better on the page. And we have a link to me demonstrating how students can use it. If students are in the Chrome browser, they can actually use the speech-to-text option that's embedded into it, and the video I shows you how the students could use the speech-to-text option that's embedded within the GMath. And it also shows you that within Google Doc, they have their own equation editor, which is a tool that some students like. I had one student on a consult who liked the plain old equation editor that was just embedded within Google Docs to use, and I had another one that liked the GMath. So you want to show both to students and have them gravitate to the one that's going to work best for them.
So am I hearing you right? Like if students have trouble with the motoric element of handwriting, or indeed if they just prefer working on a computer, this is a good app for them to use. We're not going to demonstrate the video right now, but it is available to you to go look. If this sounds like if you have a couple of kids like light bulbed in your head, this might be appropriate for. Do go and watch the video and know that it's available as a tool for these students. Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is keywords, and Alice just showed me this a couple of days ago, and I just love this tool. Go ahead, tell us.
So keywords is, and I know if you're in a math class, you've heard up and down that you shouldn't be using keywords anymore in terms of part of your instruction, and it's a memory strategy for our students, and that still stays true. That's just the name of this add-on within Google Docs.
I thought you were being rebel there for a minute.
That's just the name of the add-on. They call it keywords, but really you need to think about it in terms of a vocabulary support tool. So just like how sometimes you provide a word bank for students, this is a way you can provide a word bank with definitions for students that can be right there on the page if you have an electronic worksheet that you have them working on. And so when you have it as an add-on, and this is not a webinar where we're going to talk about add-ons in particular, but within Google Docs, you can go in and create a keyword list. And I have a sample right there, and you can name it based on your class and the period and the words that you want them. They may need support in, or the words that you want to make sure they have the correct definition for to be able to understand what the task is. And it just appears on the right-hand side of their page, and so they can still have access to the worksheet that they're working on and see whatever definitions that they need to see to be able to support that understanding. Do they still need to remember what a ratio is to be able to do that task? Remember, if they're graphing, what the x-axis is and what the y-axis is to be able to read through whatever task they have. It can be provided as a support for students, and it can be individualized. So you can create your word list, and you share the list with whichever students you want to share it with. And the student does the view key list, and they're able to see whichever ones have been shared with them. So it's really a very useful tool for students who are still developing their math language, and you want them to use that math language in whatever task that you're doing.
So again, I just saw this tool a couple of days ago, and I think I'm right in that when the teacher creates the key list, the student goes in here to the view, the second drop down.
Do you want
Yeah, we can actually go out and look at this, do you think? No, maybe not. Okay. So, okay. So we won't demo this right now, but again, it's the thing that I liked particularly about this was it was sort of a just-in-time demand. The students working right there. There's no visual break. The words are right there beside them while they're working. And other students don't even need to know that the student you're supporting has this extra support tool on the side. So it's sort of, that's another UDL element. It kind of decreases the stigma attached to these, some tools are useful for everybody, some tools not for everybody, but nobody knows what you're using or what you're not using. So this, I really like.
It really, a lot of times vocabulary is a stumbling block for our students. And so it could be a task where they have to read through something and do like a graphing element. They may need support as they're going along just in reading all that word problem that they're doing, and you can create a list to support it based on where you think the stumbling blocks are going to be for that task in terms of vocabulary.
So we're going to move on to the next feature that math teachers seem to like and be excited about. The Read and Write for Google toolbar is available to many of our students with IEPs with all the features included. And it's also available to every teacher in Montgomery County. And there's a feature on the extreme right-hand side of that toolbar, and it is an extension. So you get it in the Chrome store. So you enter Read and Write for Google, and you just get it in the Chrome store, add it to your extensions, your toolbar. And the last feature enables you to add a voice file or a sound file on top of a word, a selected word or a selected digit. And to be honest, I always wonder how can these tools support students? What's the application? And there's a few applications. Number one, if a student just wants to express without and has struggled with writing and they want to just talk about their process, how they got to a point within a mathematical equation or problem, that's a great way of using it. But the other way is for teachers to support the students. If reading is not their strength and they need a voice or some kind of verbal instruction on top of the actual text, then the teacher can add their own voice to the equation or to a word, and the student can hear their teacher explaining it from whatever device they're signed in from. So I was out with Shirin in Westland, I think she's on today, and she thought that this might be a really cool tool for math.
Yes, it could be a good tool for math. Sometimes some students respond better to a human voice, especially their teacher's voice. But also within math, if students are struggling to remember, verbal rehearsal is a very strong tool to help them do that. So if there's a problem that they can record and talk about it, and then be able to listen to what they said again. Did it really address all the factors of that problem solving that you wanted to do? And then they can go back and do some problem solving for themselves before you intervene in it, could increase some of their independence in terms of memory and also being able to troubleshoot their own problem solving without another adult intervening.
Excellent. So we're going to stop for a moment and just sort of go to a chat prompt and ask folks, given the tools and applications that we've talked about already, if there's any like student light bulb or profile or kind of student that you're working with that you think some of these tools might help. And while you're doing that in the chat window, I'm going to show you one more time how to get there. That green tab at the top of your screen, if you hit the chat, you're going to be able to chat in, pull it down and enter some text in the chat. And we're just going to stop talking for a minute and just get your thoughts on some of these tools and applications that may have application for your students. So I'm going to go mute. So Anna's thinking about the keywords being useful to some of her students, and that's I think that's a very powerful tool myself. Sam is not familiar with LearnZillion. It's fabulous. It's what we look for as people embedded in UDL, because it's so flexible. Yeah.
And it has all their worksheets are either Word or a PowerPoint that you can download. So if you wanted to make changes to it, you can make changes and add it to a flip chart or do something else. So it's really flexible.
And so at this point, I have put in the chat a link to a YouTube video, and it actually shows you how to add a voice note into a Google Doc. And I'm going to just let you guys click on that link and watch this video. It's like a 2-minute video, so we're going to stop talking just so you have another way to learn, being UDL friendly, and we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes and see if there's any more comments in the chat. Okay, Themis said it's unclear where to click. On the blue link in the chat window, and again, pull down the tab and just click on chat, and you should find the chat, and the blue link is going to be in the chat window. Thanks for that.
She got it. Okay, great. Are you muted?
Okay, so it looks like most folks are coming back at this point, so hopefully that gave you like an idea of how easy that tool is to work. Now I know hearing back what I recorded wasn't quite as clean as hearing the video because I was working in a microphone recording the actual screencast and recording the voice note at the same time, so it sort of didn't work as well. But I think you get the idea or the sense of how it works. So we'll move on.
Okay. And this year in particular, I've been getting a lot of requests to support students who are doing geometry type tasks. So it could be in middle school or high school, and they're doing things where they have to do some construction. And so we have some tools here that could help support you in students who are having difficulty navigating a compass, having difficulty with using a protractor to do a task, and doing some of the construction tasks that you have to do within the curriculum. So this tool is a Flash tool, if that means anything to anybody, but one thing it does mean, if you're working in an Apple environment, that you won't be able to use it, but every other environment you will be able to use it. And one of the things that I like about it is that it does work across browsers, so you can work it. It is very student-friendly. It has a very clean interface. It's not cluttered, and all the tools are on one side, and students can find it very simple to be able to use and learn to be able to do some of the tasks. And it does mimic the idea of using the compass and of using a protractor to do the measurements that you have to do. We have a quick screencast that Etna is going to actually put in the chat for you to just view. And then we'll come back together just so you can see how it works.
And so I'm going to put this in the chat in a second, but I do want to answer Michelle's question just to make sure. These are free features for all special education students, so I can log into their Google account and download the app. They can all get the Read and Write for Google toolbar. Now, there's many of our students with IEPs will get all the features of that toolbar, but just not all of them. It depends on the accommodation code. And I can actually send some clarifying documentation in the follow-up to this email as to who does and who does not qualify for all the features in the toolbar. But like from 3rd grade through 12th grade, many of our students do qualify to keep all those features. And every student gets some features that are free, but that's a good question, do they all get them? But teachers keep everything. So whatever you've looked at thus far, you're going to be able to do with that Read and Write for Google toolbar.
Can I also just interject, Etna? Can I just interject and add that on Thursday at 3:15 is our last webinar on the Read and Write toolbar, and we'll clarify things like who gets it and who gets the premium version and who gets the free version and all that. And you can register on PDO, and in that information that Etna sends you about the Read and Write toolbar will be information on how to register on PDO, but you could also just search for Read and Write on PDO and register for that webinar Thursday at 3:15.
So that's another date with Hyatt. We're looking forward to seeing you. But Shalene asked a really good question. Do ESOL students qualify as well? And just to answer that as best as I can, it's being talked about. But as of now, they're not a group that qualifies because they're ESOL. If they have special ed on top of ESOL, yes. But some of the free features are very applicable to our students with ESOL as well. I am going to now put in the chat another YouTube video that will clarify how to use the Geometry Toolbox app. Website that Alice just spoke about, and I like it again because it's clean, it's easy to use, and it illustrates a lot of the issues around managing the manipulatives related to geometry. So I'm going to stop talking. This is about a 3-minute video, so I'm going to mute ourselves again, and if you click on it, we'll come back to you in about 3 minutes.
Yes, it does remind you of GeoSketchpad, but the beautiful part about it is that students can use it on the Chromebook. And a lot of those tools that were PC-based didn't directly translate to having it on the Chromebook. So this is a tool that, regardless of what a student may have at home, except for Apple, that they would be able to use it and be able to do both classroom tasks and homework tasks.
Great. Okay, so next slide looks at a similar but a little more, what would you say?
Robust.
Robust. Okay, like that word, yeah.
And so sketchometry? Okay. Sketchometry, couldn't pronounce for a moment, is another tool. Now, that tool works across platforms, including Apple. You can use it on an iPad, you can use it on a tablet, you can use it in the Chrome browser. On the Chromebook, you can use it. It's just a little sketchy, because some of the features sometimes you have to click a couple of times. So I'm just going to tell you that up front. But if you're on a PC, you're good in the Chrome browser. And you can use it in any browser as well. So no matter what kind of browser you have at home, you'll be able to use it, be it Safari all the way up to Firefox. I like this tool because the student can, if they're in a touch environment, they can use their finger and draw, and they don't have to be very precise. There's also a little quick video on that, but we're not going to send you out there. When you get all the links, you can do that on your own. But the student doesn't have to be very precise with their drawing. They just have to have the idea of a circle, and it's going to draw the circle for them. If they were trying to draw a square, just the idea of a square or a triangle, and it's going to do it and start with labeling the points on it. Students are able to adapt different features on it as well. The screen is very clear. The toolbar, which is on the top of the page, if you look at the screenshot that we have, just has very simple and direct tools that you would have to do in geometry to create your construction tasks. And pretty much you can do most of the construction tasks that you would need. The only difference between this one and the first one that I showed you, the geometry toolbox, is that this one does not show a compass going around, so it doesn't simulate or look like the physical task that the student would be doing. But you can still do all the different features that you would have. This one doesn't have the protractor there where they would have to physically put it on there, even on the screen, and read it. It digitally will tell you what the size of the angle is, the measurement of the angle, when you click on the measurement tool for that. So it does eliminate some of those aspects. So if you're trying to measure whether a student can actually read a protractor, then this wouldn't be the tool for you. The other tool would be the tool you would want to do. If the goal of the lesson isn't about whether the student can actually use a protractor, but understand the sum of the angles, or apply some of our geometry conjectures that are out there for them to use, then this would probably be more appropriate for them to use. So these are just some options that are there that can support our students who are struggling with handwriting or using some of our physical tools and have maybe different things that they need to do in a geometry class to support them with their indicators that they're working on.
So I guess as with everything, it's the right fit for the right need. And just as a sort of an outsider that looked at this tool for a couple of minutes, it's got a lot more functionality. It's got a lot more power and ability. There is a little bit of a longer learning curve just because all those other features, you need to be able to know how to do them in there.
You'll see from in the video that you can change a lot of the properties that they need to. If they need to change the labels on the angle, if they need to change, write out a formula along the way. It has a text feature where the students can write. So it has, like I said, it's a lot more robust. There's a lot of things that the student will be able to do with this one once you move past the stage where they have to do a lot of measurements.
Okay, so we're getting close here. So this is
another one, which is Desba's, and it can support students that have to do any kind of graphing sort of calculation. So for middle school, even elementary, there are some elements of that in upper elementary, but for middle school and secondary school students, I like this because it's an easy graphing calculator to use. You're able to put text, you can't see me, you're able to put, if you look at the image, you can see that as a student, they could type in a response if you needed them to, but as a teacher, if you wanted to set it up, you could put the question in there of what you want them to do. Create a table, draw the graph, and they would be able to use this tool to do all those features to be able to represent what they know. So it is a very flexible tool. It works, you'll hear me say this a lot, it works across all platforms, so it doesn't matter what a student may have at home. And I found that students, even though the graphing calculator is really a very good tool, I'm not saying that it's not, some of our students with visual needs who it's not about being visually impaired, can't usually see everything that they need to see in a graphing calculator. Sometimes you need a bigger screen for them to be able to use. And this can support that need for some of our students. Some of our students, the keys on the graphing calculator, they're not able to manipulate very well. And so if they're not able to do some of those things, this is an option for them to be able to do a lot of the same things for most of our classes. So we're definitely our Algebra 1 class, our geometry class for the aspects that have to do with graphing in there, and our Algebra 2 classes, and our middle school. It will definitely support the needs for all of those.
And Marcella made a great point. Now that we have Park on the table, a lot of these, the students need to be able to access math tools via the computer, via a keyboard, and this is great practice.
And that is a great point, including the point of using an equation editor in different environments, because they will have to use an equation editor on the Park assessment.
So we're going to go through these next few slides fast because they're really just more references for you, information, yeah.
There are a lot of virtual manipulative sites out there, but when I went to this eMaths, which obviously if you hear eMaths, you know that it's from the UK. They have a plural at the, they make it plural when they talk about math.
Well, that's what I did. I did math when I was growing up.
It's from the UK, but they have a lot of tools on here that I thought our teachers would like to explore that could really support our students. So this may be a site that you didn't know about before, so just a place for you. This is the site where the Geometry Toolbox came from. So it's very robust, and it has other resources there. It has teacher resources and actually student resources that I found pretty interesting that you're able to do.
And at the risk of repeating myself, it's linked in the document I sent earlier.
As we talked about earlier, you can make your own algebra tiles from cardstock and have the kids cut them out, and they can have their own set. Or we can just go out to a website and use the algebra tiles out there. McGraw-Hill has a really great site that I like that goes from, I believe, 3rd grade to 9th grade in terms of different tools that you may have to use. And I like it because when you can search by grade and get a list of different tools that are appropriate for the math classes that you're working in. So it's flexible all in one, just the way they have it set up for a teacher perspective and a student perspective as well. Dearboard is something that's been around, but it works on the Chromebook. This particular one, if you go to the Chrome store, you'll be able to find it, and it also can work on any platform as well. And that's the reason why I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And I like VizNose Interactive Math. They have a lot of different tools out there if you just go out to the VizNose. But I just pulled out some that I really like. The fraction wall, the percentage and decimals practice that's out there for students, the angle measuring as well, being able to do that, and Polygon Explorer for students who are still working on getting those definitions in head.
And so that sort of brings us to the end of our webinar this afternoon, but don't go yet because we always like to get your feedback in a survey, which I'm going to put into the chat. But also, we'd love to get any just feedback in the chat about anything that you think you might go away and do, like tomorrow, what's Thursday, right? Figure that out, or any questions or comments that you have. So stick with us for a couple more seconds. I'll pop the survey into the chat. And we'll love to hear your comments or questions. There we go. And, you know, I'm going to break my own rule here because when I'm working or concentrating, I dislike when people are talking over my concentration, but I'm going to do it for a minute just to let you know that our upcoming Everyday UDL webinars, we've got 2 coming up soon. December 3rd is going to be about the media online resources, and we have some very, very powerful tools in our media resource folder. And also there's some new tools that have been approved for this year. So for our struggling readers and writers, tools that people aren't really very aware of but are very helpful. And I'll be working with Kathy Lee, and she is a media specialist at Brookhaven Elementary. And we will be talking and showing you some of those tools that I bet you're going to find useful in your classroom. And the next webinar after that is something we're really excited about. It's going to be in a Learning Center classroom of 4th and 5th graders that are really very self-directed, very comfortable with technology, owning their own skills and making very powerful choices about their own learning. And they are getting ready for prime time into middle school, and some of them will be entering inclusion classrooms. And it's going to be it's amazing to see how well these kids can do in a learning center environment with the tools and supports in place for them. And that's on January 27th. Neither of them are on the PDO yet, but they will be imminently, and we would love to see you at those webinars. So December 3rd for online resources, January 27th for you know, powerful student ownership in a learning center. So Marcella says she plans on sharing the list on private for other staff members. Excellent. That's great. It was the last one on Read and Write this year. Okay. Very good. You mentioned there's a webinar for Read and Write. I thought, yes. Okay. So let me explain what we're talking about with Read and Write. The toolbar literally was just approved and is able to be downloaded with all the premium features for a specific element of our IEP students. And with that rollout, we put together a series of 3 webinars. They're the same webinar. It's a repeat. So if you've attended one, it'll be the same content. But the last of the 3 is going to be aired on Thursday afternoon of this week, and you can enroll on the PDO. But we will have, it's recorded. So if you don't get on there, shoot us an email. We send you a recording. But also, we do actually have after-school face-to-face workshops on assistive technology in the Chrome browser. So if you get on the, yeah, we have one on November, right? No, but we've got 2 in November actually. Sometime around the week of the 17th. I think there's 2 in a row right there. So if you get on the PDO and search for Chrome browser or AT in the Chrome browser, you'll be able to log in and enroll for a face-to-face class where we will make sure you have the toolbar, you understand the toolbar, and there's a lot of other elements to that training as well: speech to text, text to speech, word prediction. So what is the course number? Oh my goodness.
Not sure really we know that off the top of our head, but we can try it. It does start with an 8, but we'll try to include it when we send the email
we'll send that in the email. Good point. Okay. Yeah.
And this will be great to share at a math department meeting.
Yeah, that would be super. You're more than welcome. Okay.
Okay.
Great. So again, it's been a pleasure to have you here with us this afternoon. We're delighted you're here, and we hope that you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 takeaways that you'll be able to implement and really just be able to support your students with them.
And please go out and just try some of these tools yourself to see how they work, because once you try it, that's how you know how you're going to explain it to your students, or you may be able to envision which student this could really work for.
Yeah, that's how I learned that geometry toolbox and the sketchometry. Just went in and played. So, all right. Well, we're going to stop talking. We're going to leave the webinar up for a couple of seconds just in case anybody has any questions. And thank you so much for completing the survey. That's how we get better and how we meet the needs of the folks out there in our webinars. So we will see you soon in a webinar, and take care. Get home safely. I hope it stopped raining. Doesn't sound